this lesson, we're going to look at the new features of the recently announced Resolve 16.1 public beta, specifically the new features and enhancements found in the cut page. Assuming you've watched my tutorial on Resolve 16's cut page, nothing has changed in terms of editing workflow or the approach to cutting a project. In this tutorial, I'll spend most of my time focusing on the new Multicam editing functionality. And as you'll see, it's a radically different approach than what you might be used to, but it's also pretty amazing too. But before I get into that, let's look at some organizational improvements to the media pool. So here I have 3 bins with related clips in them. Using this drop-down menu in the upper toolbar, you can view each bin's contents by selecting it from the list. I'm going to view all of these clips in this Ghost Town Exteriors bin, but perhaps I want to add another bin so I can further organize my clips. You can now add a bin directly from this menu. I'll name this bin Cars, then press Return. Now, I'll hold down the Command key to select all the thumbnails with cars in them, then drag them into my new bin. I can double-click the bin to see the contents, or I can use the menu to view my clips one level up. If I want to move clips out of a bin, I can right-click on the bin and choose Open as New Window. Then select the clips and drag them back into their parent bin or any other bin. Since I have so few clips, another bin is unnecessary, so I'll remove it. Another feature that was improved upon is where timelines are stored once you create them. I'll name this My Timeline and click Create. In version 16.1, the timeline is now added to the master bin instead of being placed into the currently active bin. This is much better because it's faster to locate your timeline if it's not sitting in some bin structure 10 levels down. Double-click to open the timeline. Just like in Resolve's Edit page, the active timeline appears above the viewer. The next feature we'll look at is some improvements to the source tape mode. To do that, I'm going to jump into the Ghost Town Exteriors bin. One of the best things about source tape mode is that you don't have to double-click each clip to load it into the viewer. By clicking this button, Resolve will string out all of your clips into one virtual master clip. Each of these vertical lines represents the start and end of each clip in the bin. You can control the order in which these clips appear in this virtual clip by changing the sort order. For example, if I choose duration, the source tape clip reconfigures itself based on each clip's duration. And if I choose clip name, the source clip tape reconfigures the order using the clip name. What's new in 16.1 is that the source clip can now string out every clip in the master bin. I'll go back to the master bin to reveal all the bins. In the viewer, we now see every clip in every bin strung out as one long source tape clip that can be scrubbed and marked with in and out points. Now let's get to the real big changes, particularly the new sync features. Let's open this bin with 2 interview clips in it. There's an A camera and a B camera. Now, prior to this version, the only way to edit a matching B, C, or D camera angle into the timeline was to have matching source timecode for all clips. And let's be honest, how many of you have matching timecode for 2 or more of your cameras? We really needed a way to sync using audio waveforms, and now we have it. Now, before you attempt to sync a clip, I would highly suggest you jump into the media page and assign angle metadata to each camera angle. Resolve needs to know the priority of your cameras so it can properly configure them when using the sync camera feature. But more on that in a moment. Click on the media page and select the main camera. In the metadata viewer, choose Shot and Scene. Scroll down to the angle input field and enter A. Now select the second camera and enter B for the angle. Return to the cut page. We're now ready to sync these 2 clips. You don't need to select them because Resolve assumes you'll be syncing them, even if you have 3 or 4 other camera angles in the same bin. All you need to do is click the Sync Clips button. A window will appear called the Sync Clips window. The first thing you'll notice is that both clips seem to be offset from each other. This is because each camera did not have matching time code when the scene was shot, but we did start the recording at roughly the same time. Scrubbing over the clips, you can see that angle 1's clapper comes in before angle 2's clapper. So these clips are definitely not in sync, and I don't need to play them back to prove that point. The cut page gives you 4 methods for syncing. You can sync by timecode, audio, in-point, or out-point. I'm going to select audio and then click sync. Within a few seconds, the clips are synchronized via their audio waveforms. Let's quickly check our sync.
Scene 1, take 1.
Once you've confirmed the sync, you're ready to click the Save Sync button. In the bin, the clips present a colored sync badge to indicate that these clips are now in sync. So the next step is to choose in and out points for the A camera. I'll double-click it to load it in the viewer. Then scrub to where I want to start my clip. Right about here. I'll press I to mark in point, but leave the out point set at the end of the clip. I'll add this clip to the timeline by dragging it from the viewer. I can scrub and play the clip from the upper or lower timeline. Now here's where things get really interesting. Now that I have the A camera clip placed in my timeline, I want to be able to cut to the B camera angle and have it be in perfect sync, but I also need to see the B camera in its synced relationship to the timeline clip. This is where the new sync bin comes in. Click this button and you'll see both the A and B cameras stacked on top of each other. It's called a sync bin because when I move the playhead over the clips in the bin, the playhead in the timeline stays in perfect sync with it. Because everything is in sync, I just need to find a place where I want to cut in the B cam. I'll play some of this section here, looking and listening for a place to cut.
It's long been said that for the past 80 years, for reasons families on vacation would be heading to Las Vegas, and for some unknown reason, they just make a right turn on Interstate 95.
I like this spot where Steve is talking about turning on Interstate 95 from Las Vegas and ending up in the desert. To cut to the B cam, I'll select the camera number to load it into the viewer. The viewer playhead is parked at the exact point the timeline playhead is parked. Notice that an in point has already been marked at this frame. The out point has already been set 5 seconds from the in point. So Resolve is assuming that you want the B cam to appear at least 5 seconds on the screen. You can change this here, but I'm going to just leave it at the default 5 seconds. To cut to the B camera, click the Place on Top button in the toolbar. The clip is placed into the V2 track for exactly 5 seconds in the timeline. To play it back, click the Timeline button. Because the B camera has a scratch audio track that Resolve used to sync these clips, I'll need to turn off the audio for the V2 track. Let's play it back.
Unknown reason, they just make a right turn on Interstate 95 and end up here. And they stop, they get out, they take a break.
Awesome. The edit totally works and is in perfect sync. Let's do this one more time just so you can better understand the flow. I'll play the timeline listening for another good place to cut. I like this section where Steve talks about people disappearing in the desert.
And then they disappear for the rest of their lives.
It's a dramatic moment in the interview. Park my playhead here, then return to the sync bin. The playheads are perfectly aligned and in sync. I simply choose the B camera, then click the Place on Top button. I'll close the viewer window and play back.
The rest of their lives. And so I came here wanting to investigate, and I want to actually...
If the default duration for the B camera is too long or too short, you can simply trim it in the timeline, and everything stays in sync. I'm going to make this clip a little shorter.
Lives. And so I came here wanting to investigate.
So this is really a smart feature and a very interesting take on multicam editing. In this last section, I want to look at 2 more features. Let's make a cut right after Steve says, the rest of their lives.
Appear for the rest of their lives.
You can use the scissor icon to make the cut, or just press Command B. I want to insert some B-roll at this edit point. The great thing about the cut page is that you don't have to have your playhead explicitly on an edit point to do an insert edit. As long as your playhead is in proximity to an edit point, Resolve will insert your clips at that edit point. To make things easier to identify the nearest edit point, these white arrow icons tell you when the playhead is near an edit point. Notice when I move my playhead near a cut, the arrow appears. It's a helpful visual. Let's insert some B-roll. I'll go back to the exteriors bin, where we have some clips that already have in and out points set. I can also quickly add in and out points by hover scrubbing over each clip and pressing the I and O keys. I'll then select 3 or 4 of these clips. Then click the Smart Insert button on the toolbar. And just like that, all 3 clips are inserted at the cut point. The last feature we're going to look at is something called the boring detector. The way this feature works is that it uses an algorithm that analyzes the length of your clips, then presents visual flags in the timeline depending on how you have it set up. So for example, let's say you want to know if there were clips that were longer than 5 seconds. You would enter that value, and any clip over that duration would be flagged in the timeline. The same is true for jump cuts. If you wanted to know there are clips that are under 3 frames or 5 frames or whatever, you can set that as well. Once you enter your values, click Analyze. In the timeline, the gray regions flag clips that are longer than 5 seconds. So for example, any clip with a gray bar indicates potentially, quote, boring shots per your criteria. So, assuming you agree with this, you can trim these boring shots as needed. I've noticed large chunks of my interviews flagged as boring, but then again, interviews are mostly boring, I suppose. But what about clips that are so-called jump cuts? I'm going to deliberately shorten these clips to under 5 frames. Notice that when the clip hits my duration threshold, these clips are flagged in red. So with this detector turned on, I can see that any clip shorter than 5 frames will be flagged in red, and any clips longer than 5 seconds will be flagged in gray. The so-called boring flags are somewhat arbitrary and mildly useful if you're not focused on real storytelling. But the jump cut feature I do find useful. There are many times when you inadvertently have flash frames in your edit, which this feature will certainly catch. But overall, I think it's an interesting feature and I hope they continue to refine it. So that's it for the new features in the cut page for Resolve 16.1. I look forward to adding more content as Blackmagic Design continues to evolve this application. If you like this tutorial and want to learn more about using the cut page in Resolve 16, I've created a full tutorial on our website that covers every feature. Right now you can purchase the tutorial for $20. It's regularly $29. Just use the code below in the info section. And thanks for watching.